Number 3. King who? Changes may be on the horizon for the British monarchy. You may be thinking that happened in 2022 with the death of Queen Elizabeth II. However, there is a prediction for Nostradamus that many think applies to King Charles III. The prediction is as follows. Because they disapproved of his divorce, a man who, later, they considered unworthy, the people will force out the king of the islands. A man will replace him who never expected to be king. A quick recap if you're not a royal watcher. When then Prince Charles was married to Princess Diana, he had a very well-known affair with the current queen consort, Camilla, also known as Camilla Parker Bowles. Prince Charles and Princess Diana's marriage deteriorated, and the two divorced in 1996. Princess Diana died in a tragic car accident in Paris in 1997. Princess Diana was beloved all over the world, and her legacy continues to this day. On the other hand, Prince Charles had to fight negative press coverage after admitting to cheating on Princess Diana during their marriage. So these facts cover two parts of Nostradamus' prediction. Number 1, Charles and Diana divorced, and many people were upset by this. And number 2, Charles expects to be king of the British Isles. So far, it tracks. The next part is the leap. Is anyone even considering that Charles will not become king due to his divorce? And who is the person never expected to be king who will be crowned instead? Well, a royal expert named Anthony Holden points out that in the entire history of the British monarch, there has never been a divorced man who has become king. This is compounded by the fact that King Charles even confessed to his affair and expects the woman who participated in that affair, Camilla, to be crowned queen consort. Furthermore, an expert on Nostradamus, Mario Redding, discussed the possibility of Charles not taking the throne. In his book, Nostradamus, Complete Prophecies for the Future, Redding wrote that the resentments held against him will persist and lead to his abdication. And the second part, will the person who takes the throne simply be the next in line, Prince William? Redding wrote that Prince William would become king in his father's place, and we suppose that even though William expects to be king at some point, maybe he's referring to the fact that he wasn't planning on becoming king at that point in time. However, in the second version of his book, Redding asked the question that perhaps the person Nostradamus was referring to was not William, but his brother, Prince Harry. Prince Harry is well known as the spare to William's heir. He even published a memoir entitled Spare. He never expected to become king. He and everyone else always saw him as the backup to the main goal, which was for Prince William to become king after his father, Charles. Another potential candidate being banded around is an Australian man named Simon Durante Day, who claims to be the child of Charles and Camilla. He was born in the United Kingdom in 1966, which would have been the correct timing when Charles and Camilla were together. He was adopted by a family who was close to the royals. All these facts have led Durante Day to put forward his theory that he is Charles and Camilla's long-lost son. Some theories suggest that this is the person who will unexpectedly become king. In fairness, no one would have seen this coming. However, there are some issues with this prophecy. Redding also argued in 2005, by the time the Queen dies in 2022, which did come true by the way, there would be no countries left in the Commonwealth, and King Charles would only rule over the British Isles, so Charles would only be king of the islands. However, that's not the case. Members of the Commonwealth still include countries from all over the world, including, but not limited to, Cameroon, Fiji, Grenada, Bangladesh, and Canada. So Redding's hypothesis that the Commonwealth would have shrunk so significantly by now is inaccurate. It would be surprising if Prince Harry were to become king, as the recent publication of his memoir has lifted the curtain on the going-ons behind the scenes in the royal family. Harry's garnered considerable criticism for his behavior since leaving the royal family, and has expressed no interest in returning to the life of a full-time royal. We can't imagine he would change his mind about becoming king. Finally, while some experts argue that Charles will have to abdicate, other experts, including Sir Vernon Bagdonner and barrister Geoffrey Robertson C.K., say that Charles will most definitely be crowned. So at 74, Charles may finally get his dream job. Number 2. Climate change. The next prediction relates to a regularly discussed topic, climate change. Their prediction reads, for 40 years the rainbows will not be seen. For 40 years they will be seen every day. The dry earth will grow parched, and there will be great floods when it is seen. The lines regarding 40 years of rainbows and 40 years without are fairly ambiguous and are harder to relate to what is currently occurring. However, droughts and floods are less vague and much more relatable to our current environmental situation. Due to climate change, extreme weather is beginning to be the norm rather than the exception. The Earth is currently 2 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than it was in the 1800s, so the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions has become an emergency for the health and survival of our planet. However, in the meantime, climate change has caused many more issues than simply bad weather. For example, the Horn of Africa, which includes countries like Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, and Somalia, experienced one of the longest droughts ever recorded in its history in 2022. The drought isn't just a warm day, it threatens people with starvation and also forces them to leave their farms. Australia is also dealing with extreme weather, and a Washington Post article from October 2022 summed up their situation perfectly. First came the fires, now Australia is facing devastating floods. And this mixture of flood and drought periods, combined with heat waves, is why Australia had wildfires in 2019 and 2020. Not only that, but research suggests that the wildfires may have even caused damage to the ozone layer. Moreover, California has been experiencing extreme rainfall in January 2023, which is uncharacteristic of the region. They received around 10 to 20 inches of rain in the first 2 weeks of January. The flooding is causing people to leave their homes and lose power. The situation has become quite dangerous. At the time of this recording, at least 22 people have lost their lives due to the flooding. These have included people being stuck under vehicles that were caught underwater, or even people being swept away in the flood. So this prediction from Nostradamus is true, but it was true before 2023 as well. The only question is how the 40 years without the rainbow and 40 years with the rainbow will come into play, if it does at all. Number 1. The economy and cannibalism. The last prediction we see, at least partially coming true, is regarding the economy. The prediction states, there are no abbots, monks, no novices to teach. Honey will cost much more than candle wax. The price of wheat will be high. Man will be agitated and eat his friend in despair. Okay, before panicking, let's walk through this. Many have connected this prediction to the cost of living crisis seen around the world due to rising inflation following the COVID-19 pandemic. The cost of living rose 8% across the world in 2022. During the COVID-19 pandemic, starting in 2020, many countries had stringent lockdown restrictions. This caused a significant dip in demand for certain services, which include travel, restaurants, and any kind of activity that required people to gather. However, the demand for services majorly jumped when those restrictions began lifting. This caused a supply and demand issue as the demand was high, but the supply couldn't keep up. Not to mention, people who were able to save money during the pandemic decided to start spending it. The supply chain then had issues. All this led to inflation. Everything has become more expensive, mortgage rates and rents have become higher, and many found it incredibly difficult to save money at all. Not only that, but those who were already struggling financially before inflation are now working even more. For many, prices rose, but their paychecks didn't, which made it even harder for people to keep up with the rising costs. So Nostradamus' prediction that honey and wheat prices will rise perhaps refers to the rise in living costs. And we are currently grappling with the effects that have continued to reverberate following the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, it's time to move on to the other parts of Nostradamus' prediction, which is the more upsetting part. Particularly the prediction, man will be agitated and eat his friend in despair. Will we resort to cannibalism as a result, or is this symbolic, like it's a dog-eat-dog world? Many articles we came across joked about this particular part of the prediction. Some have argued that the prediction was purely symbolic. We suppose that's the easiest way for us to look at the situation. Who wants to think of us turning on each other and eating each other? There's no situation where people would resort to that, is there? Well, there have been situations in history in which people have resorted to cannibalism out of desperation. In the United States in the 1840s, a group became known as the Donner Party undertook a dangerous journey from Missouri to California. During their trip, they battled the weather and taking other routes than recommended, but were left with very little food to survive their long, arduous journey. Not only did one of the members murder 2 First Nations people to eat them, but many of the party ate the corpses of their friends after they died. There are suspicions that more people were killed for the express purpose of providing food, but it seems not to be confirmed. Also, in 1972, Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 crashed while flying from Montevideo, Uruguay to Santiago, Chile. The plane was chartered by a rugby team called the Old Christians Club. However, the plane never completed its trip as it crashed in the Andes Mountains in Argentina. There were 45 people on board the plane, and only 16 were finally rescued after being stranded for 2 months. With such little food on board, the survivors decided they had to eat the corpses of those who died to stay alive. These situations seem shocking when thinking about them from the comfort of your own home. However, desperation will push people to do many things they would never do otherwise. We don't know if this is what Nostradamus was referring to when he said after the cost of living becomes too high for many to afford, they will resort to cannibalism. But, as they say, desperate times do call for desperate measures. So let's hope that inflation rates go down before we get to that. Let's prove Nostradamus wrong.